We've looked at a few methods of the string class, including 2 lowercase, 2 uppercase, index of, and the 2 substring methods. And there are other methods associated with the string class. And you don't necessarily have to remember what all those are. There are some easy ways to look those up. If we're in Flash inside a project, looking at our code, over on the left-hand side we have the ActionScript help system. And a lot of what we've been talking about so far is in the top level. It's things that are built right into Flash. We don't have to specify the package or the class that they belong to. And you'll see things in here like the math class we've already looked at in terms of using random, in terms of using floor. And now we're looking at strings. So I'm going to click on this string class and you'll see a listing here for the methods. So here are all the methods associated with the string class. Those that have words in them after parentheses are inherited methods that come from a superclass that this class is derived from. And you can see here index of. If we scroll down a little bit further, you'll see the 2 substring methods, 2 lowercase, and 2 uppercase. We've looked at all of those. And if I right click on any one of these, I can simply add it to my script. I don't have to type it out. It's a quick way of being able to add these in. I can also view help. Another way that I like to get information is simply through Google. So I might Google ActionScript 3 string class, and the result that comes up, the very first one, is help.adobe.com. This is from the API reference system, which is the application programming interface. And I'm going to click this and I'll see the help for ActionScript 3 for the string class. And I can see which package it's in. It's in the top level, as we've already seen. Gives me some information. There are some examples here working with strings, so some articles I could read. And then scrolling down, I'm going to see the properties. So there's the length property looked at. Now there's some inherited properties that come from the superclass constructor. I can show and hide those. And here are the methods that are built into the string class. And I can also show and hide inherited public methods. So we've looked at index of. If it tells me what that does, it searches the string and returns the position of the first occurrence of the value found at or after the start index within the calling string. And I can see the parameters that are here. There's a string value that I'm looking for, and then there's a index number of where I want to start looking. And it's going to return an integer. So I always want to look at what the return values are. If I wanted more information on index of, I could click that and see a little more information on the parameters, what it's going to return. And then again, there's more examples here that I could click on and find more information, find how it's used. And then there's also some other methods that are related. So there's also a last index of, which is going to look from the end of the string forward. Well, today we're going to look at charCodeAt and fromCharCode. charCodeAt takes as its argument the index number of a string, or the location of a character in a string, and returns the ASCII or Unicode value of that character. So if I had a capital A in, say, at index 0, and this was a 0, it would return a 65. fromCharCode actually kind of does the opposite. Here I'm going to put in the character code, say 65, and it's going to return a letter for me, or a string for me. And I can have multiple characters in here separated by commas. If I click on fromCharCode, we can see more information. So I can see more information on the parameters. And it says these are a series of decimal integers that represent Unicode values. So it doesn't have to be just one. And it's going to return a string. It's going to return the string of the Unicode character codes of those values. Now one of the keys here for me is looking at examples. And so here's an article on working with characters and strings. I'm going to click that, and I'll see here an example of using charCodeAt. And so they have the phrase hello world in a loop. They are simply going to display each of the ASCII values for each of the letters. And then down here, we see an example of fromCharCode where they're taking those same values, placing those inside a comma-separated list of integers. It's going to convert each of those back into the letters, and it's going to set the myString variable to hello world. Let me show you my example of using these two methods. So in my example here, I'm going to use both of these, charCodeAt and fromCharCode, in creating an encryption and decryption application. And I'm going to have a variable called XYZ, which is a string variable. I'm going to just put the letters ABC into it. And then two variables, old char and new char, which are both integers. Another string variable called ABC, not to be confused with this ABC literal string. This is a variable. It's set to null. And a counter called I. And then I've got a for loop that's going to go through each of these letters individually. So I'm starting with 0. I'm going to continue my loop as long as I'm less than the length of this string, which is going to be 3. So it's going to go from 0 to 2 because I'm incrementing by 1. And each time through the loop, I'm going to get whatever this value is, the numeric value or the ASCII value, which for capital A is 65. I'm going to add 3 to it. And then I'm going to take that value, which is now 68, and find the character that's equivalent to that and add that to ABC. Now I'm adding basically three characters over. And what I'm going to get through this process, let me just show you. The first time through the loop, I equals 0. I'm going to get the first character of ABC, which is going to be the A. That's going to be a value of 65, charCodeAt 0. I'm going to add 3 to it, so new char is 68. And I'm going to take new char and convert it to a character that's a capital D. That's going to go into ABC. Second time through the loop, I is 1. The old char now is 66. That's the capital B. I'm going to add 3 to it. That's 69. That converts into a uppercase E, and that's concatenated into my string ABC. So ABC now equals DE. Third time through the loop, I equals 2. I'm going to get the character in position 2, that's a capital C. That converts into a 67. Add 3, I get 70. Convert that to a character as an uppercase F and concatenate that into ABC, and ABC now equals DEF. So I now have an equivalent encrypted string from ABC into DEF simply by adding 3 characters or moving 3 characters over in the list of our alphabet. And that is how encryption and decryption works in a very, very simple way. Well, let's use this in an application. So here's my demonstration of a public and private key encryption system in which if you wanted somebody to send you something that was encrypted, let's say a credit card, or maybe it's going to be one of your colleagues and you're figuring out how to bid on a project that you want to make sure that nobody else can see what you're planning to bid. And so this might be an email that you want to have encrypted. So I would send that person my public key, and the public key is nothing more than an algorithm that takes the text that they have typed and encrypts it using this algorithm. Let's take a look at the code here for the encrypted key. Actually, let me run this first. So I'm going to go to test movie. So the user would type out their message to me. They would then use this encrypted public key to encrypt it, and this is what they would send me. So other people in the network, this is what they would see, and unless they have the private key, they cannot decrypt it. But it comes to me, and I then use my decrypt private key and convert it back into the text that the user sent to me, unencrypted. Well, let's take a look at the code of how this is happening. So I have my 2 buttons, encrypt_btn and decrypt_btn. The encrypt button calls a function called send message. And here's my send message. I'm simply going to change the text, and I'm going to use a function that I've written called public key. We're going to look at user-defined functions in the next set of videos. But here's my function, and I specified the algorithm here, what's happening. So I'm going to generate a round number between 0 and 9. I'm going to save that as a variable factor. I'm going to get the charcode of the letter, so in a loop. I'm going to take the ones digit and multiply it by 3, and the value from step 3, that ones digit, I'm going to add that value to the charcode minus the ones digit. I'm going to add the factor to the number and convert back to a character using fromCharCode. A little more difficult algorithm than just adding 3 to the character. It'd be harder to break. And that's all this is. You can design your own algorithms, but that's all this process is doing. So I'm basically using the system that I showed you where I was adding 3, just going through a little more of a process and adding this factor, this number, and then using that in my for loop. And after I've gone through all that, I'm going to return ABC. Now notice the very first thing I'm setting in ABC is that factor number. So I need to also include this randomly generated number as part of my string so I know how to decode it. And then here's the private key. So when the user sends me the message, I'm going to run this function being called from my read message function. And going through a loop again, I'm going to look at the character, and I've got a switch method here that is basically going to convert the numeric value of this character, running some mathematics on it in terms of if I'm going to add 10 or 20. And eventually I get this new char converted back into the original ASCII value or Unicode value, and I'm using fromCharCode then to convert that back into a character, concatenating all that together, and then returning ABC, which is going to result in the recipient text being the unencrypted format of that paragraph. And so that's how we might use charCodeAt and fromCharCode.